Parkour is not just a practice of learning movements, it is the practice of understanding movement. A vault is not simply a vault, nor is a precision jump merely the act of landing accurately on a surface. They are expressions of our relationship with our bodies, our environment, and our ability to adapt to both. For this reason, meaningful training must embrace two complementary principles: repetition and variation. One teaches us to move with familiarity, while the other teaches us to move with uncertainty. Repetition is a conversation between the body and the mind. Each attempt reveals the subtle shift of balance during takeoff, the unnecessary tension in the shoulders, or the slight hesitation before committing to a landing. Through repetition, movement becomes less about consciously controlling the body and more about understanding it. What once required thought gradually becomes intuition. There is a difference between performing a movement and knowing a movement. A movement performed once is merely an experience. A movement performed hundreds or thousands of times becomes knowledge. Repetition transforms movement from something we do into something we understand. It builds consistency not because we become stronger or more coordinated alone, but because we develop familiarity with our own capabilities and limitations. Confidence is not born from succeeding once, it is born from succeeding repeatedly. Repetition develops trust. Parkour demands precision, and precision demands reliability. When we train repeatedly, we are not attempting to prove that we can perform a movement, we are attempting to discover whether we can depend upon it. A movement that succeeds occasionally is a possibility. A movement that succeeds consistently becomes a tool we can confidently bring into unfamiliar environments. Reliability is therefore not separate from safety, it is one of its foundations. Yet repetition alone is incomplete. We become proficient not in the movement itself, but in the circumstances surrounding it. We learn a particular jump from a particular distance onto a particular obstacle, and unconsciously begin to associate our competence with those specific conditions. The movement becomes attached to the environment in which it was learned. Repetition without variation risks being too comfortable in set conditions in the environment, which rarely happens in real-life scenarios. Parkour does not exist within controlled environments. Walls differ in texture and height. Rails differ in width and stability. Distances change, surfaces become uneven, and circumstances rarely remain ideal. If repetition teaches us certainty, variation teaches us adaptability. Variation challenges our assumptions about movement. A precision jump performed across different distances teaches us that movement is not a fixed action but an ongoing process of adjustment. A vault performed over obstacles of different heights teaches us that technique is not a rigid sequence of motions, but an adaptable solution to changing problems. Every variation asks the same question in a different language: can you still move well when the circumstances have changed? This adaptability is one of the defining qualities of parkour. We do not train to memorize fixed solutions, we train to become capable of identifying them in real time and solving them adaptively. The goal is not to prepare for every obstacle that exists, for such a task would be impossible. Instead, we develop principles of movement that can be applied wherever we find ourselves. In this sense, variation is not merely physical training, it is the cultivation of creativity, awareness, and critical problem-solving. Repetition and variation should therefore not be understood as opposing approaches to training. They exist in service of one another. Repetition gives movement its roots, while variation gives it its branches. Without repetition, our movements remain fragile and uncertain. Without variation, they remain narrow and inflexible. Together, they produce movement that is both reliable and adaptable. A useful way to understand their relationship is through the following principles. 1. Repetition develops consistency, efficiency, and confidence. 2. Variation develops adaptability, creativity, and resilience. 3. Repetition teaches us how to perform a movement. 4. Variation teaches us how to preserve that movement when circumstances change. 5. Repetition builds trust in our abilities. 6. Variation builds trust in our capacity to respond to the unfamiliar. 7. Repetition creates dependable fundamentals. 8. Variation prevents those fundamentals from becoming limitations. Ultimately, parkour is not just about mastering specific obstacles. Obstacles are temporary, they change from one environment to another and eventually disappear behind us. What remains is our ability to move. Training should therefore not be centered upon becoming proficient at particular challenges, but upon developing principles of movement that transcend them. We should not aim to become someone who can perform a precision jump on a specific wall, but someone who understands precision itself. We should not become attached to particular training setups, but instead cultivate abilities that can express themselves wherever we choose to move. Mastery in parkour is not just found in performing increasingly difficult movements, but it is also in becoming increasingly adaptable. To move well is to be both certain and flexible, to possess movements refined through repetition and liberated through variation. The most capable practitioner is not the one who has memorized the greatest number of fixed techniques, but the one whose understanding of movement allows those techniques to emerge naturally in unfamiliar circumstances. Parkour is the study of movement. Repetition teaches us to know our movements intimately. Variation teaches us not to become dependent upon them taking only one form. When practiced together, they cultivate something greater than technical proficiency. They cultivate the ability to move with both confidence and adaptability, wherever we may find ourselves.